Hello, everyone, and welcome to Power Nickel's live investment summit today, hosted by Six. I'm pleased to introduce our speaker for today, Terry Lynch, their CEO and president. Terry's going to be walking us through a company presentation, and then we're going to be asking some questions live. So remember, if you'd like to participate, please submit your questions in the chat found on the right-hand side of your screen in the chat button. As always, this event is being recorded, and it's going to be available on demand on Six.com in the coming days, so look out for that if you want a refresher. Without further ado, Terry, I'd like to pass things over to you so that we can get started.
Thanks very much, Ken. It's great to be here and great to be chatting with our investors and interested people in Power Nickel. It's a tremendous time to be getting an update on the story, and if you're new to the story, it's a tremendous time to be learning about the story because it's a story that can make you a lot of money, pure and simple, and that's what everyone that's on this call is here for. They're ultimately here as investors. They're trying to evaluate whether I should buy the stock, sell the stock, or really go heavy. So we'll give you as much as we can, the straight information on that, and let's start rolling into it right now. So our headline is the world's first carbon neutral nickel mine. We'll pick that up as we go through the presentation. As always, we're not going to tell you anything we don't believe is true, but it's always incumbent upon us all as investors to do our own due diligence. Why invest now? As a personal investment strategy, I've always found I've made the most money when I got the macro right and the micro right, and I think that's what's setting up now for Power Nickel and for many other companies. I think in the the battery metal space. Today I know everyone's sort of terrified with what's happening with the regional banks and all that uncertainty, and I'm sure all of us have looked at our portfolio and it's down and we're a little bit depressed and feeling poor, and that's there. That's fear, and it's in the streets, and it's palpable, and we can feel it. And it's certainly reflected in the stock prices of many companies out there, including our own. But this is where real money is made, folks. And this is where, I'm telling you, you got to get some courage, and you got to start to find these special situations like Power Nickel, if you feel it's the right one, or others. And you've got to make some significant investments because it's going to pay you big time, and all your current problems with your returns are going to disappear because you're going to make a lot of money. This chart on the left is how the commodity to equity ratio, and you can see as you look at it, we're down here. This is the commodity sector right now. This is where it gets when it peaks, and you can see this is sort of when it's just sort of like average somewhere up in here. So this is going to rip, and it's going to rip a long ways. And it's not just, fantasy, because right now, my second point here is on the massive commitments that are happening in the battery metal space. As an example, something like $50 billion of construction is already happening now, building battery plants across, Canada and the United States. So that's money that's going to be completed and done. And those battery plants are going to have huge demand for battery materials, lithium, nickel, cobalt, graphene. So there's going to be a lot of demand for those products, and there's just not enough supply. So especially for class 1 nickel. So that is going to be a big, sort of what I call tides coming in. You want to be investing with that tide. What's driving that is, of course, the Inflation Reduction Act, which was the first U.S. policy, which basically set aside some massive incentives for individual consumers to switch to buying electric cars. Now, the way they set that up was that they would give you, I think, $7,000 or $8,000 per individual per purchase, as long as it met a certain minimum North American supply line. So it started off fairly benign, I think 40%, and then over the next few years, it goes up to 90%. Well, as it goes through that period of time, if you don't have, as an example, North American nickel in your car, you just won't qualify. It just won't have enough North American material. So, those are the little nuances that are really important to sort of understand as an investor, because what does that mean? Well, it means that everyone's going to be scrambling to secure North American supply. So if you're a North American nickel supplier, you're going to be winning the lottery ticket. And that's what we got. Okay. Second thing, government incentives, not just in the United States, not just in them giving, like the Department of Defense giving $115 million to a nickel company called Talon Metals, which is one of our peer companies, but also saying that they would do that for Canadian companies. And what's even more profound is about 3 or 4 weeks ago, when the federal and provincial budgets were pronounced in Canada and in Quebec, they made an enormous statement that has gone completely, I think, unrecognized by the markets. So the federal government is committed to providing a 30% tax credit to build critical mineral mines, including nickel. So to build the mine and to put the equipment in there. Quebec is going to provide up to 25% tax credit. Tax credits are basically like cash. We can turn those to cash. So think of it. All of a sudden, we're going to get 55% of our capital cost of a mine paid for by the government. Okay. So in our case, simple nickel mine would be maybe $250 million. A actual mine that we'd like to build at the end of the day that actually can produce high-end nickel wires, powders, and anodes that the actual battery industry uses will cost $400 million. So in Power Nickel's case, we could be the beneficiary of over $200 million of free government money to build this mine. Mind-blowing when you think that our market cap is 25 and we could get a gift like that if you think we're going to get commercial. Now, we're going to switch to the micro, and I'm going to show you that we're going to get commercial, and that's why you really need to be getting long Power Nickel. So the first thing I'm going to point out is we're extremely undervalued compared to our peers. That slide's a little hard to read on this one, but we'll get into it a bit more in depth. But the point of the slide is that we're trading at 1/6 to 1/20th of our peers, okay? And we're going to be every bit as good as them or maybe better. So that's the flashpoint. So, okay, what is going to be the catalyst for that to actually happen? Well, generally speaking, it's probably going to be when the new 43-101 is posted, which will basically say, hey, we've got, we think, somewhere between 8 to 10 million tons of 1.5% nickel. But, along the pathway, it's the drill results. Because we've been putting out killer drill results literally the entire year here. And there's more killer results to come. Some more next week, some more in a month's time, some more in 8 weeks or so. And that'll be the last 3 sets of assays in this current drill program. And as each set of assays comes out, because we post all of our drill colors and assays, so people can model it themselves. We've actually posted our own Leapfrog model, so you can get in and have a look at it. So this is where we get this data and this confidence that we're going to have this much tonnage. So, that's as these results continue to come out and support big intercepts with a lot of nickel, a lot of palladium, a lot of copper and cobalt, that should give you confidence that, yes, in fact, we are going to get commercial. And that's just the beginning, folks, because this thing's not going to be a small nickel mine. It's not going to be 8 to 10 million tons. We're looking, our comparables are already Lynn Lake, 22 million tons, and Voisey's Bay, over 50 million tons. That's where I expect we're going to be at the end of the day. This will make this $1 billion deal. And today you're buying it for 25 million US. So spectacular opportunity. Let's dive into the details. For those of you new to the story, obviously the existing investors will know we're fully running in Quebec. This is a Quebec story. We're basically, our mine, the Nisk project, is in just outside of Nemaska, Quebec, which is sort of, as you can see, sort of center of the province, but it's considered northern Quebec. It's just east of James Bay. Quebec is without doubt the best place in the world to be looking for critical minerals right now. A number of reasons for that. Firstly, they have done a tremendous job in working with local communities, in particular the Aboriginal partnerships. In this case, the Cree, who are our partner in this area, and they've educated them and incentivized them to basically participate in the mining sector and profit from it. So right now, within this probably 100 kilometers of the Nisk project, there's 4 mines being built or already built. So that means you got great community support. So community support is critical and is often a risk factor in building a mine. So we don't have that. So that's awesome. The other thing that's really, they've done a great job is infrastructure. So you can see that we're just outside of this town called Nemaska. There's an airport there, and basically that's 8 kilometers outside of town. So all these supplies are basically being set up, and supply chains. So we can obviously get to that. That's really great. In fact, right across from our project, which you can get to off a 4-lane highway, and our drillers, when they were drilling there, just last week, they would go home at night, stay at a very nice Cree-built lodge, a resort lodge. So for junior mining, that's fantastic for that. So it's obviously going to be easy to build. Right across the street from us is a major Hydro-Québec substation. So infrastructure is really fantastic in Quebec and in this area in particular. The third reason, and probably fundamentally the most profound reason, is the financial incentives to explore and to build in Quebec are unmatched anywhere in the world. So we just closed a round of financing of about $4.8 million or so, where we raised money at basically 50 cents. And our stock price as of today is around 25 cents. So how is that possible? Well, it's possible because of the incentives, the various tax credits, federally and provincially, that are available in Canada and in Quebec, and the deductions. And so we were able to basically get, high income paying Quebec investors to invest at 50 cents. And they immediately sell the unit, which was a share and a half warrant at 50 cents, to our end investors for 25 cents, the very next sort of second, really. And then that first front-end investor, the net impact for them was they effectively went from a 54% tax rate to about 42%. So they were up at 12 points after tax, no risk. They move on. Great. Thank you for your service. We got 50 cents in, so that helps us and all of our existing shareholders, a lot less dilution. Now we can go forward with exploring the project and proving up more tonnage. And this round of investor who paid 25 cents, he puts $1 in, he's got $2 working for him to make his investment prosper. It's a win-win all the way around. And obviously that's made possible by the government policies who are really trying to inspire, the change and the, the carbonization of the economy. And they want the critical minerals sector to prosper. So they've, I criticize the government a lot of times, but they're really doing a good job, I think, in critical minerals and what they're doing there. So now that was fantastic. Now, as in the opening I talked about, now it's not just about exploration, it's also about building. So projects like Nisk, if we have a $400 million capex, up to $200 million in tax credits will be generated there. So that'll make this project really easy to get going, provided, of course, there's a valid mine there. And of course, everything sort of depends on that. We're going to get to that in a second. When I opened up, we talked about the world's first carbon neutral nickel mine. Obviously, environmentalism, the green movement is a big thing these days. And we're not wrapping ourselves in the flag. Of course we are, but we're not doing it just to be sort of flag wavers. We're doing it because it's actually good business. And we believe it'll be a strategic competitive advantage for Power Nickel to be the world's first carbon neutral nickel mine. How are we going to get there? Well, first thing we did, we basically were the first Canadian miner to offset our drilling costs by getting Verra certified, credits to offset our use of diesel in our drilling program. So we used a very innovative Canadian company called CarbonX and their program called Drill Green. And we increased our drilling costs from $200 a meter to $200.25. So yeah, we're paying an extra 25 cents, but now we're drilling clean. Okay. So that's an important part of our whole methodology here, because we think there's money to be made for our shareholders by being perceived as the greenest nickel on the planet. How else do we move forward? We think with the technology we're using state-of-the-art technology to find our nickel and to drill it up and prove that it's there. We're using a company called Fleet Space Technologies and their ambient noise tomography. We're using airborne EM. All this will minimize our drilling and allow us to maximize our discovery. Okay, so less ground disturbed, less issues. Thirdly, obviously we're in Quebec. We're just south and east of James Bay. So the world's best hydroelectric power is right at our footsteps, literally across the road. So we're going to use green hydroelectric power to electrify our mine. Generally speaking, most mines are off the grid and run by diesel, both their power and their trucks. So we'll be all online and everything will be run by electric, okay? Processing wise, we're looking at a number of different processing solutions for the nickel that we're finding. And we're at this point focused on the most environmentally friendly one, which will be an amazing process that will be. It's been around for about 17 years, and it will be the most efficient in terms of no effluent, in terms of the air, recycling the water. So all these things can be, when you design them in up front, don't cost you, can actually be beneficial. And then the fifth point I would make is the fact that ultramafic deposits, such as what we have in Power Nickel, by nature naturally sequester CO2. If you hit them with some oxygen before you put them on the tailing pile, it'll actually triple the sequestration of the CO2. So we're going to verify that, and we've been in touch with this is now accepted science, and everything we'll do will be verified, and we'll prove out that in fact we're going to be able to accomplish our goal of having the world's first carbon neutral mine, but we'll do it with a view to basically profiting from it. Why do I say that? When I was in Korea 3 or 4 weeks ago, meeting with all the battery manufacturers over there, I met with several that had done deals with Indonesian laterites. And I'm not throwing rocks at Indonesia. They're doing the best they can with what they've got. But that is a heavy CO2 drag. So they have to use a lot of CO2 to make the mines, to build them. And then they have to use a lot of CO2 to keep them operational. So that's, competing against us, which will be carbon neutral. So you can imagine if you're Ford and GM, and Ford buys from Indonesian nickel and GM buys from Power Nickel. Do you think the marketers are going to use that to their advantage and say, hey, Ford's using dirty nickel? That's going to happen. So at the end of the day, people want to get associated with clean nickel, and this will be a very big selling point for us. All the environmentalism in the world won't do us any good if we don't have a fundamentally strong business. In mining, that starts first and foremost with the core deposit. So we've got to have grade, we've got to have quantity. So we're going to show you what we've got. We started with 3.1 million tons of about 1.6% nickel EQ. That was a great start. We then drilled 8 holes to verify that historic resource, prove that it was valid, and we had great success there. And drilling 18, 19, 27 meter sections, all 1.5% or better. So that gave us belief that this was something special. We ramped up effectively a 30,000 meter program, of which we're about almost halfway through now. You see sort of gold spots and purple spots. These are holes that have been reported, and this is the shape of the ore body. And you can see, and I'll walk you through 3 of the most recent assays that we released. So when we released a 43101 in August of last year, and it showed 4 million tons of 1.5% nickel and about 5 million tons of at $8 nickel and 5 million tons at $9.60 nickel. We had to pull that 43101 because it used 10-year and older metallurgical study, which wouldn't have been a problem if we were a Quebec company or an Ontario company. But because we're a BC registered company, they have an obscure rule that says if it's a metallurgical study is more than 10 years old, you can't use it. Our QP didn't know that. We didn't know that. So that's why we ultimately had to pull that 43101. Nonetheless, the ore body was there, and that's what we're really building on. So from that sort of model, this particular hole, 2209, was 150 meters away from the nearest resource. This was a 40-meter hole of over 1.6% nickel. So an amazing sort of hole, one of the top 5 holes in nickel. 60% of our holes have 1% nickel or better. The next release we posted was, I think it's basically 10 meters of almost 3% nickel EQ, a monster hole. So again, all this, another 90 meters away from the 150 away. So all this is adding big tonnage. And then just recently, like about 10 days ago, we released about a 16-meter hole of around 1.5% nickel EQ, again, in this same sort of sector, but 90 meters further west. So, adding a lot of tonnage by basically filling in these pods. So this particular square that we're looking at, that's about 1 square kilometer, okay? So this is, in fact, what the nickel, what we call the river nickel looks like. So like rivers in real life, there are lots of twists and turns. So you can see that if we don't catch one of these turns, we could lose a lot of tonnage. So it's very important to get those tonnage. So I want you to keep that in mind when we talk about the fleet airborne ambient noise tomography in just a second. The importance of identifying all these twists and turns to pick up the maximum number of tonnage you can for each of our pods. So this is a top view down of about a kilometer stretch, and this just shows you how the thickness works. And it basically goes really from 40 meters to 5 meters. And all the way up and through. So this river nickel gets wider or narrower, it gets shallower and deeper, and it gets clearer and cloudier. So that's just the nature of discovery. So when we're trying to sort of prove this out, we're trying to obviously find the widest intersection possible and the deepest. But of course, it'll be what it'll be. So sometimes, that's why not all of our drill holes are successful, nor should they be. Because if they were, then we wouldn't be doing our job of pushing the envelope to see how wide things are. But nonetheless, we're getting tremendous grade across this whole thing and tremendous widths. So that's why we're confident that when we update our 43101, we're going to have a mineable ore body right now with just this one pod. But that's just the beginning. This is our sort of map of our property. And it's actually, there's going to be some new changes to this, because now this 3.5 kilometer section is now stretched out to 5.5 kilometers of ultramafic rock. We've been exploring maybe 1.25 kilometers of it, and that's what we call Nisk main. And we've just flown an airborne EM over this section, and EM basically captures magnetic ore bodies. So massive sulfides, like we're looking for with our nickel, would get captured. So this thing lit up like a Christmas tree. Was very exciting stuff, and that'll be part of the technology we'll use to find the next pods. Because interestingly, in nickel sulfide mines, every single nickel sulfide mine in the history of the world is always multiple pod. So hey, it could always happen that we'd be the first that's not like that, but it definitely doesn't look like that. It looks like we're going to find multiple pods, and this thing's going to be a whopper. So in the ultramafic world, our comparables in Canada, Lynn Lake, 20 million tons, Voisey's Bay, 50 million tons. We think we're going to be in that mix, 20 to 50 million tons. How do we get there? Well, obviously stuff like airborne EM, downhole EM, IP, and this new technology called ambient noise tomography. So we picked up on this when Talon Metals, one of our peer companies, which we'll talk about in a second, used this in Michigan on their Tamarack deposit. And they used it because Elon Musk obviously has the offtake with them. And he actually put these guys in with SpaceX into satellite. And what they do is they basically put these little platinum-looking things over here called geodes, and they put them in this contraption, and they put them on the Earth. And we sort of put it into the Earth, and they're about 100 meters apiece. You put them initially across our core deposit, where we already know we've got 8 to 10 million tons, or whatever the math works out to be. And we'll do a sound pulse, and basically the pulse will go down 2,000 meters into the Earth and come back as a sound map. And so these sound maps can then be correlated to our hard scientific data of our drill core, obviously the IP, the downhole EM, the airborne EM, and that allows them to capture basically a 3D image of our deposit at depth. That's really important for several reasons. Remember that point I told you about the squiggly river. Remember how the bends were, and how each bend, if we missed it, would be maybe 1 million or 2 million tons of ore grade. So missing one of those turns could really be costly. Well, with this, we're going to be able to see, hey, did we miss? Is there some additional easy tonnage that we can add by just infill drilling this? Okay, step number one, let's do that. Step number two, this gives us a signature that we can look at and say, okay, we know this signature correlates to massive sulfides of good grade, and let's look and see where are these other signatures similar to this, okay? And let's see where they're similar to this, and they also correlate with the airborne EM or an IP, because then it's like, okay, now concentric circles are working, so that makes it much more likely that our odds are going to work for us and the drill bit's going to work out. But this could be deeper, because oftentimes rivers of nickel are stacked, so there's a river up top, and a river in the middle, and the river down the bottom. So let's see, okay? It could also be on this whole 5.5 kilometer sequence of the ultramafic rock. It could be, we've got several of these pods. Okay, let's again see where it is, again, tied into the airborne EM or the IP. And then we're basically, at this point, just studying 2% of our land package. So ultimately, we're going to explore the whole land package and look for these signatures in the hope that we can find multiple pods and make this into a 20, 30, 40 million ton, 50 million ton nickel project. We certainly have this opportunity. We believe, as I said, we believe we're going to be between 20 and 50 million tons. If you believe what we're saying, that we're going to get between 20 to 50 million tons, if we're going to get to 8 to 10 million tons, then the valuation for Power Nickel is about to change radically in a very short time. We're talking that we think we've been saying to folks that we'll get the 43101 out in July. So sometime between now and July, or worst case in July, we're going to get this evidence out that eventually the market will react to. So right now, the nickel sulfide companies listed at the top, these are like us, undeveloped mines that have the market deems them as being commercial, and they basically valuation somewhere between 140 million and 480 million US. Our financing was just completed at 25 million US. Okay, so that basically suggests we're trading at 1/6 to 1/20th of the values of our peers. Okay, and our peers are down 50% across the board. So I'm not suggesting these are bad nickel companies. They're very good nickel companies. I believe you should own the whole sector, honestly. This nickel stuff is highly undervalued. But within the sector, we're the best value. Okay, we have the most upside. So relatively speaking, this is the time to back up the truck and load up on Power Nickel because we're so undervalued, and the news flow is strong and the evidence is strong. What's our action plan? Okay, let's talk about that. We're going to release drill results over the next, we got 3 more sets of results that come out over the next 8 weeks. Okay, we're going to announce our spin out, which is basically, we'll get into that in more detail in just a second, but our projects in BC and ultimately in Chile. We're going to release our airborne EM survey, which we talked about as we were going through this, which shows, hey, there's a lot of interesting, highly magnified ore bodies at or near surface that need to be explored. We're going to release our metallurgical study, which will show that, yeah, we can process this ore efficiently in an economic way so that it can be mined. We're going to use gravity, seismic, airborne EM, ambient noise tomography to find these other pods, and that's going to happen in Q2 so that we can start drilling again in Q3, and probably by mid-July, we'll be back in the bit, and we won't stop drilling until December, and we hope to add a second rig. So this thing is going to start to crank, okay? We'll update our 43-101. We hope to get it out, I think at this stage, early Q3 is like, in July is like, that's what the target looks like because of some delays in getting the metallurgical study done. And then, the 8th point is we'll hope to deliver a PEA or better by Q1, Q2 next year. What do I mean by or better? Well, or better, I mean that it's possible that we'll go directly to a more advanced phase, i.e. a feasibility study. We're certainly having those conversations with industry now. And that's what I think people are missing. The people are reflecting the stock market and say, oh, the stock is down. Maybe the drilling results aren't great, but no, that's not it. Stock market is down because there's a lot of fear out there and because there's short sellers in this marketplace. They say it's bad form to talk about short sellers, and I've not talked about them for a while, but you know what? I'm now talking about them because these guys are bane on our existence and of many junior mining companies, okay? Not just Power Nickel, almost across the board. These guys need to be put out of business, and the governments need to wake the hell up. It's frustrating. We've been, Save Canadian Mining has been campaigning on this for 3 years now, and very little to nothing has been done. So, we're highly frustrated. However, we're learning some new tactics that can help us help ourselves, okay? I'm going to share a couple of those ideas with you today. So when we do this spin out, which we're going to get into in just a second, it's going to be spun out, and the company that comes out of it will own our BC project. And this project will be listed not on the TSXV. It'll be listed on another exchange, probably the CSC. And the reason why we're doing that is to have a hard physical break so they cannot just do their paper games and say, oh yeah, we're covered in paper. Bullshit. You're not covered in paper. You certainly, I suspect there's maybe as much as 40 or 50% of our float is naked short. Okay. That's my gut feeling. And those guys can get away with it because they have more money than God. They can always have more capital to keep on turning over the stock. So they're able to somehow skate this through the regulators despite our objections. And that works to some degree for them. However, when you have a dividend that isn't on the same exchange, now you got to, the only people that are going to get that stock are my shareholders, our shareholders, okay? Bona fide shareholders that have a DRS in their account, okay? Not an IOU for a DRS, okay? That's like a stock certificate. Either you have the stock certificate or you have a DRS, which is the digital form of a stock certificate. Either one of those two things, you're going to get your dividend. If you don't have them, you're not going to get it. And now you're going to be angry. You're going to say, hey, to your broker, say, hey, where is my stock? I paid for it. Where is it? It's because these guys are shorted and not delivered. That's the whole thing with short sellers. They do not deliver. There's a lot of failed delivers, okay? So this is one way to sort of stop them, okay? Second thing, we hired a company called Share Intel. Share Intel is an accounting firm out of the US. They've developed an innovative new approach to quantifying short selling in any individual company stock. So they basically, with bona fide CDS and Broadridge data, they collect the information, and I expect to get a report in the next week or 10 days on Power Nickel, because we've been doing this, where they'll actually be able to tell us, here's the brokerage firms and the locations within the brokerage firm where accounts are naked short, okay? And here's the proof of that. And we'll be able to take that information, and we'll be sending cease and desist letters to the compliance departments of those brokers and saying, hey guys, you're probably unaware of this, okay? Here's the evidence of this malfeasance that's happening on your watch. Here's exactly where it is. In 2 weeks, we're going to have more evidence of that. In 2 weeks, this needs to be gone, or you're really part of the problem. You're part of the malfeasance, okay? So that's been done with a handful of companies, and the brokers are cooperating and actually closing these guys out, as they should. So this may be an important new tactic in our war with the shorts. And I think that, again, I don't think people should be buying Power Nickel because of the shorts one way or the other. You should buy this because we're going to become a nickel mine and we're going to get paid regardless of the shorts. But these are some of the tactics we're going to use to sort of deal with them. And I think that could be super beneficial for us going forward. Let's talk about the spin out. So the spin out is going to be first our project in BC called Golden Ivan. Golden Ivan is this yellow project up here in the, it's really the Mount Rainy. It's Mount Rainy, the top of Mount Rainy, which overlooks the town of Stewart. Stewart's over here, it's a port. Right? And this is the start of the Golden Triangle right here at the base. So Ascot Resources is building a mine right here. Scotty Resources right next door to them and to us is one of my favorite junior golds. It's got as many 50-gram gold holes as Great Bear did. Obviously, the huge gold success of a couple of years ago, that at the same time of its existence. Strike Point's just beneath us, and they've had some good results as well. So we did some sampling, and the sampling showed 3 different sets of half-ounce gold at surface. So that's exciting. As I said, we're in a area that's never been drilled, and we've got permits now to drill it this summer. So our intention is to spin it out, and we'll value it at what? Well, it's probably going to be somewhere between, this is like Strike Point was 17 million, Scotty's 65. We think it'll be probably somewhere in the 10 to 15 million range, and we'll raise $1.5 million, and that'll be separate from Power Nickel's kitty, and then we'll drill this project up, and that company will have its own management team that obviously will be on the board and oversee it, but that'll move forward. Now, what we'll do with the stock is, let's say we're left with 88% of the stock. Well, that 88%, 66% will stay with Power Nickel, and 22% will be dividended out through a plan of arrangement to our shareholders. Okay, so there'll be a nice little bonus here for our shareholders, and that'll we expect to hopefully formally announce this the next 10 days, and then basically it would ultimately be approved at our annual meeting in early June, and then the plan of arrangement takes about 45 days. So call it 1st of August or sometime like that. This will be up and running. We think it'll be a great time for. We think basically gold and copper exploration companies are finally going to get a chance this fall, and this will be great timing for us. The second part of that strategy will be to do that with our Chilean properties. It's really expensive to do it all at once. It would cost us an extra $300,000 of just wasted money, wouldn't create any value for anybody, and it would be a pain in my neck to have to go through all this paperwork and crap. So it makes no sense to do that. Instead, we'll hire a fairness opinion. It probably costs us $40,000 or $50,000, and then we'll transfer the shares over to the new pubco, and so it'll have both the Chile properties and our BC property. So that's how we're going to do it. Now, I'll tell you an interesting story about Chile. Why we're super excited about Chile. It's obviously got still the issues with the nationalization of the lithium and stuff like that. That's been over said. Really, I'm not really a big fan of the current leadership there. I think they're Chile's an amazing country, and I love the Chilean people, and we've done business there for a long time, and I think they've got some fantastic business opportunities. The interesting part was the constitutional reform was rejected massively by the audience, something like 2/3 to 1/3. So this current leadership is running on thin ground. I doubt he'll be able to get that approved through the Senate. We'll see. Lithium was basically nationalized anyway in Chile. So it's a bit of, they're not really major news. And if you actually work there, you'd know this. But they didn't obviously touch copper or gold for obvious reasons, because, they didn't need massive investment in there, and they can't do that. And I think this guy will be gone. So I believe politically Chile's sort of at its nadir, and that it'll come back. What's interesting from us, from a actual science side of things, of finding the deposits, when we were going through, you look at these huge land tracts, 4, 6, 8,000 hectares. It's in the Atacama Desert. Okay, desert exploration is very difficult. Why is it difficult? It's difficult because there's a mineralized limestone in the sand called caliche. Caliche basically acts to restrict IP and gravity signals, which is how you usually put together regional plays. And so it's very tough, short of using little blaster rigs to get down underneath the surface and do samples. It's really tough to get a regional view together. Now, when we're doing our due diligence on the fleet ambient noise tomography, one of the things that we learned was they basically have been using it for a couple of years in the West Australian desert, very successfully finding copper mines, finding lithium. And I said, so I know from other previous business experience in West Australia that it basically has caliche as well. So I said, well, what about caliche? And they said, no problem. The sound waves go down, they come back at sound maps. Caliche does not obstruct that. So I mean, that's really something. That's could be a game changer for Chile, because these are vast land tracts. I mean, think of the size of the city of Toronto. That's the land package we control in any one of these. So obviously you have to vector that down in terms of where you're at. So so basically it's an interesting new approach. And so when we're done with using the geodes in Nisk, we're going to ship them down to Chile, and obviously it'll be going into what at that point will be the new company, but it'll be creating value for Power Nickel shareholders is the point, and it could be significant value. And basically, this stuff is free at the moment, so it'll be a hell of a bonus. Last point to talk about, just in terms of refreshment, is we do have a very nice royalty in Chile, 3% NSR. Teck can buy 1% for $3 million, and has the first rights on it. We're in discussions with another royalty company right now. Hopefully conclude this in probably Q3 at this stage, and that would see us get between $5 to $7 million, I think, US. Great capital to have at this stage. While the royalty is worth a lot more in the long run, if we're selling Nisk to keep the royalty, that's the wrong move, because Nisk is really the thing that's going to make us a lot of money as shareholders. So this could be a nice little cash injection. And again, most people have no clue that this is even something that we own. Management team hasn't changed. We've kept it very lean at this stage. As we start to grow here, I suspect we'll start to add some key team members. But for now, in Ontario or in Quebec, for example, we use GeoVector, Joe Campbell and his team, Adam Finley and Eric Herbert. They've been just sensational, really fantastic guys to work with, very professional, done a whale of a job for us. And honestly, we probably couldn't buy that talent, but we can rent it, and it's actually cost effective to do so with the way the tax vehicles work in our country. And the same thing out west, we use Apex, another highly esteemed scientific engineering firm, to manage that process for us. So again, that's the way to go for us. In Chile with Jimena, we operate directly. Our board's been very supportive, been with us for several years, and their board owns 4% of the company stock. So obviously they're key stakeholders. The key shareholders, the Lynch and the Lynch family, the last 2 rounds, we've been the biggest single investor, and all of our core investors have invested. So the core investors, the Critical Elements, the Stern family, BT Global, Palace Capital, have all added or increased their holdings. So each round we've taken 60 to 70% of the round. So I think it's really, when I'm looking at investing, I like to see management with skin in the game. I like to see key stakeholders continuing to maintain or increase their stake, because they know the deal better than anybody. So if they're buying and it's like, these markets like they are right now, that's a very good sign. So here's our cap structure. We got 130 million shares out, generally speaking. One point I would note is we got about 28 million warrants at about 20 cents. Most of them 70% owned by those stakeholders. So at 40, they become callable. So we'd expect with the news we've got coming out over the next several weeks that this thing is going well north of that. And this will all obviously add to the capital we have to work going forward. But we're well set up cash-wise to drill through to 2024 and then beyond. And I think what'll happen is we'll end up probably doing some interesting feasibility study with a major company here shortly, and that will allow us to totally sort of re-envision, what this thing can be when it grows up. And I say to people, it's entirely possible that we'll never have to go back to the market to finance again. People say, how is that possible? Well, it's possible because industry is going to come in and finance it. If the market's not there, industry will be there. So this is the point that people are missing. And that's why, I know I'm pounding the table and it's self-serving because obviously I'm a big shareholder, but I'm saying to you in all sincerity, this is the time to buy. Like, I'm giving you the checkered flag. It can't get any more obvious. You'll do what you do. Let's wrap it up. 10 reasons to invest in Power Nickel. Power Nickel's got a phenomenal nickel sulfate discovery. Okay. We're trading at a massive discount to our peers. The drill results have been excellent and continue to sort of come out every 3 or 4 weeks. And that's always great, getting news out all the time. We're fully funded to drill another 15,000 meters starting in July, moving into results starting to come out in Q3, Q4. So again, lots of news in this story. We're going to find new pods. We're going to, we think, grow to between Lynn Lake and Voisey's Bay size. That would make us $1 billion company. Battery metals are hot, and we got them all: nickel, copper, cobalt, palladium, and platinum. Nisk has it all. The spin-off offers excellent bonus potential, and it's also going to be a way to, I think, sideline the shorts, who have been a bane to our existence. The leadership team is well connected. We've been able to pull these things together because of our connections in the sector. And by God, we're in Quebec. And that is the place where you can get 2-for-1 exploration dollars, and where it's possible we can build this mine with up to $200 million worth of support from the governments. So, I mean, it really is an amazing story. We're thankful that you guys have been with us along the way to support us and give us your capital to work with. We're working as hard as we can to bring the bacon home, so to speak. It's not there yet, and we're continuing to sort of fight the good fight. But we're highly confident, never been more confident, that this thing is really going to be a huge, huge home run. So, Cameron, without further ado, why don't we take some questions and see where we go from there?
Yeah, absolutely, Terry. Thanks for going through the great presentation. And as you say, to everyone in the audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them to the chat that's found on the right-hand side of your screen. First question that we have: how are the operations or future development of Nisk project going to be affected by climate change, for instance, cold weather?
You know what? Cold weather for us is good because we can operate in cold weather. The only time you can't drill up there is basically, right now, actually, sort of, they call it the goose season. It's the ground soft, and sort of late April to end of May, sometimes early June. It changes year to year, but ground gets soft. So that would be the only thing that would happen there. Operating in cold weather is not a problem for us because, obviously we'll engineer around that, and we got to assume it got, when we were drilling, it got us as low as I think 30 and 40 below, and we were still drilling. And safety, we enhanced our safety protocols, and so we did all that. So that would not be a problem for us at Nisk.
Okay. Adrian wants to know why move forward with the spin out now, and why not wait until the mining sector is more obviously in favor?
Yeah, we did pull out last year. We were planning to do this last year, and then we held up. And I guess this year we have the sense that two things. One, we believe that the mining market will turn because and it's just basically on supply and demand fundamentals. Copper in particular, we're bullish on. And if you look at all this uncertainty in the banking world that we're seeing today and for the last few weeks, gold is obviously steady and at 2,000 and looks like it could go north. So we think there will be a junior mining market, and if it's not this fall, it's coming soon. The other thing we're doing is we're doing this to separately sort of move those assets out so they can stand on their own 2 feet, and that they can be valued independently at Power Nickel and financed independently at Power Nickel. We want Power Nickel to be all about nickel. And then we want to maximize the value of our copper gold assets, but we feel this is the best way to do it. And then lastly, this is going to be a vehicle to trap the shorts, and that's a big part of the strategy.
Okay, great. Adrian has another just question. How new is the ambient noise technology, and can it be used for greenfields or undrilled properties, or is it just mainly used for confirmation and expanding knowledge about already assayed drill holes?
Yeah, it's about, I mean, they've been working on it for several years, but I would say it's been fully operational maybe for the last 2, where they're like really sort of making discoveries and running it sort of full steam. It definitely has been used in greenfield. Every greenfield has some sort of geological information. You've got some, usually government maps or government, there's always something that you start with. So you would start with that. So I don't know, rhythm and verse and how successful they've been on greenfield exploration. I do know they've been successful with, in particular with, adding resource to existing operations. And that's where we fall in. So that's why it was attractive to us.
No, fair enough. Kenny wants to know if you could share more on your discussions in Korea with battery manufacturers. Is there any talk of investments or offtakes?
Yes, we've signed 3 NDAs already. Since we've been to Korea, 2 things happened of significance. The Korean government has given the battery manufacturers a $5 billion, program to draw down upon to make investments in infrastructure, i.e., mining. So as soon as they announced that, I got a flurry of NDAs. The second thing that happened, of course, was the federal and provincial budgets said that they would pay up to 50% of our mine costs to build a thing. So that's a changing dynamic, and people haven't figured this out yet. It's really material, because generally with a bankable feasibility study, if you had 50% equity, you could bank the rest. So all of a sudden, the need to have the Korean investors or the offtake investors or the Glencores of the world that come in at these types of stages, or these intermediaries maybe changes the game, and now, like, we're dealing with basically right now, we're dealing with an end user that actually makes products, final stage nickel products, high value final stage nickel products, like triple the economics of what we get if we were making just nickel concentrate. So they've come to us because now their clients are saying, we want to make sure you guys have nickel. So they've got to now move upstream. So there's some paradigm shifts happening in the space that because we're in Quebec, because we're in North America, we've got a chance to really hit the home run here, and it could be a grand slam that wins the World Series. It's amazing.
Okay. Adrian wants to know, can the LME be relied upon to set a realistic nickel price in the future, or will price setting and trading move to a different market over time?
There's a lot of speculation on that, and LME lost a lot of credibility, no question about it, because of the debacle last year. That's all you can call it, really. So I don't know what the answer is on that. Still seeing contracts based on LME at the moment, but I would not be surprised to see perhaps Chicago or some other exchange develop an alternative nickel pricing mechanism. It would make sense to me that happens. Possibly Shanghai. I don't know. It's the LME is effectively controlled, I think, by Chinese investors, and there's been a lot. They let that that major Chinese firm off the hook, really, and there's lawsuits and litigation on that. That's really why there's people have lost confidence in it. So yeah, it's a good question. So they'll eventually sort that out, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some competition.
Great. Thomas wants to know, which resource, based on the drill results so far, are you expecting to release in June or July? And he's asking for some tons and grades if possible.
Yeah, and again, all we can do is, we can't, we've been giving guidance that we think will be somewhere between 8 to 10 million tons of around 1.5% nickel EQ. That's all I feel really comfortable in saying. I don't know exactly. We won't know until we get all the assays in and run them through the model and spin them back out. But we were up to really sort of 5 million tons when we were, when we had to pull the 43-101 because of the metallurgical study, and we've drilled some massive holes since then. So I believe that that's a good number, but obviously the 43-101 will be out shortly, and we'll all know the answer.
Great. Question is, how many short shares do you think are outstanding? And timing wise, when do you think that you can defeat them?
Hey, you know what? Timing is always the toughest thing to predict in any business. I think there's upwards of 40 million shares short, which is, I know, sounds like people say, you got to be kidding me. And I'm saying, hey, and I wish it was only power nickel, but I believe that 30% is a very common number for short positions undeclared in Canadian mining stocks. I think that's a lot, and I think it could be as high as 50%, in some cases more. How to defeat them? I would just be happy to have them get the hell out of the stock. That would be victory for us, because I'd just like to be valued for our good results or our bad results. We can take the medicine if we don't deliver the goods. I would hope that over the next month, the tactics of the spin-out, the share intel pressure, the enormous good news that we're going to be having over the next 8 weeks would basically make these guys say, you know what, there's better people to be shorting than power nickel. Let's get out of the way of the freight train. That would be good advice for those guys.
Fair enough. Now the question, how have assay results met your expectations from 1 to 2 years ago? And do you think that a phase 4 might be required to find more discoveries?
Absolutely. I think assay results have met and exceeded our expectations. Like, we're super happy with these assays. We're this is a robust deposit, man. And it looks like, we've tested off to the west and off to the east and had great hits on the ultramafic sequence. The airborne EM has given us lit up like a Christmas tree. We're very excited about what we see there. So a lot of potential for additional exploration. Yeah, we expect there'll be a 4th phase and a 5th phase and a 6th phase, because if we expect to get to 30 million tons or something in that order of magnitude, it's going to take a lot of drilling. We'll be, basically, you figure that theoretically 1 rig could drill 100 meters a day, but ends up averaging around, for whatever reason, 70. So you figure that's basically 2,000 to 3,000 meters a month. Okay. So that's 15,000 meters. So maybe we've drilled 13,000 meters, and maybe we're going to go from, let's say, 4 or 5 million tons to 8 to 10 million tons. So we double it. So you start to get an order of magnitude and say, hey, if you're going to get to 30, you're going to basically have to drill, 60,000 meters, or 75,000 meters, and that's going to take multiple rigs and obviously some time. The key thing with drilling is that we've been very careful, because obviously we're always tight for cash, because we're a poor junior miner, and your cash is always tough to come by, even though we've stocked up now. But so you can't be drilling willy-nilly. You got to be drilling with the science. Make sure, like, we're probably hitting 60% of our holes, 50 to 60% of our holes. That's what you want to be hitting on, is because you're going to miss some, because you're trying to, as I said, make that river as wide as possible, as deep as possible. It's not always going to be there, but you got to try, and then you bring it in. Okay. But so it would take several rounds of drilling to maximize this. But at the same time as we're drilling and maximizing this, we can be optimizing the plant and getting permitting going, so that this thing can get into ground a lot sooner than people think. And that's the whole magic of it.
Right. There's a lot of appreciation in the chat for today's presentation, but there is a pointed question. If is this presentation accessible somewhere that people can go and get it from a download? And there's also a question about if it's possible to have the Excel database of the press release disclosed with mineralized intervals.
Yeah, you can go to our powernickel.com website and look under Nisk, and you'll actually see there's a spot there, access the data, and all of that data is available. Everything we've produced, the full Excel spreadsheet is there, and all the azimuths, so you can model this yourself. We actually put our own leapfrog model in there as well, so you can do it. We're not trying to fool anyone here. We're very happy to be transparent with our data. So it's out there for you to model with it and do as you like.
Okay. Adrian wants to know, do you have any previous experience with respect to government funding? Does it tend to come with lots of conditions, possibly constrictive conditions, or can it be drawn down and used at will?
Yeah, the way these structures are set up is just like the financing structure. So, for example, we've used, the last two financings. We financed at double the market price using the incentives the government set up. How do we do that? Well, we did it through the free market. So we basically, in both cases, we worked with Industrial Alliance as the broker, and they were the broker with I would call it the Quebec-based financial partners that had high tax brackets, and then we brought, generally through a non-brokered arrangement led generally by the core six, shall we say, and then other brokers that participated bought these investments back. So that's an example of the free market system working, where the government had set the parameters, and then everyone sort of played within the parameters and got what advantages they wanted to see from their investments. Same thing would happen with the building. So it's open to anyone as long as it qualifies as a critical mineral property, and I'm sure there's some process that we'd go through to show that, hey, this is not a gold mine, it is a nickel mine, so that obviously would be need to be proved up. But generally speaking, it looks to me like the way they've set this up is not like they are picking and choosing. They're saying, if you build a plant in this time frame, we've set aside this many billions of dollars to subsidize this with tax credits as long as you fit this criteria. So clearly we fit the criteria, and then the rest is sort of in the math.
I'm unfortunately at the point where I have to pick a final question, folks, just because we're coming up on time for the hour. We'll make sure that we pass along any questions that have gone unanswered to Terry and his team so that he can follow up with you guys individually after today's summit. But Terry, with just a couple minutes remaining, I wanted to pass things back to you, just for any closing remarks you might have for the audience, anything else that you want to highlight.
Yeah, I think, as I was reflecting before I came on, I was thinking about what a challenging time it is for us all as individuals and in our families. We came out of COVID, we're into this bit of a slug of a recessionary environment, and we see, a lot of fear out there. You got regional banking issues, unemployment issues, lots of negativity, and that seems to dominate the headlines, and I say, we have to understand that's the world we live in, but there is a tremendous amount of hope out there, and the hope is, there's a lot of great new technologies. There's I think in the critical mineral space, Canada is going to hit it out of the park. We're going to have some monster wins where there's going to be 10x's and 100x investments. So investors can really make a fortune, like a life-changing, family-changing fortune. And it's going to take a bit of courage. People are going to have to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to buy this, and it might not go up tomorrow. Okay. It may take, who knows how long it may take. It may happen in a month. It may happen in 6 months, but you got to have the courage of your convictions. You got to sort of say, hey, if I make 5 times my money and it takes me a year, can I be patient? And if the investment isn't that good, if you don't feel fully convicted this can make you that many times your money in the year, then don't buy it. There's bargains out there in many, many, many stocks. And you should be looking at those bargains and be asking those critical questions. Not, can I make 10% and flip it next week? That's an idiot's game. You'll get buried, okay? The money in investing, it really is find great companies that are ultimately going to deliver the value, okay? Deliver the goods. And if you find those great companies, invest in them and hold them, and you're going to make a lot of money. And you know who gave me that advice? Eric Sprott. I asked when we were doing, working on Safe Canadian Mining together, I had obviously some times to chat with him. I said, Eric, how'd you become so wealthy? What's your secret? Is it because you get to see all the deals? And he said, no, he's back tested because he's an actuarial guy. And he said, I back tested it. He says, not that. He said, I back tested great management teams and real, sort of, promoters, and wasn't that either. He said, what it is, he said, after the first round, he says, I cull them very quickly down to the second round of guys where I think they've got a pretty solid chance for being a mine. He says, after the second round of results, he says, I know which ones are going to be a mine. And he says, I'm 20% the rest of the way. He said, that's how I made my money. He said, I bet with them and I held them and I made a lot of money. And I say, well, there it is. Lessons from a multi-billionaire who's clearly the best mining investor in the world. And I thought to myself, well, this is why the Lynch family owns 20% of Power Nickel. So, I mean, that's the message, folks. This one's going to be a winner and you want to maybe check it out. Anyway, great having you here today. If you got questions, by all means, email us. We're pretty accessible here at Power Nickel and happy to help you. So in the interim, have a great day and go Leafs, go Oilers.